Alright, so the next episode from My Hero Academia. I think next week is honestly where things start to get, like, really interesting because our main players are gonna start coming into the foray. You know, meaning, like, Shigaraki's, like, now awake in the next episode, and he's gonna, like, do some shit, especially considering what ends up happening towards the end of the episode and what's pretty much revealed by then. And then, you know, Deku, because he's the main fucking character, is finally gonna join into the foray as well instead of just doing whatever the hell it is that he's doing. I think he was evacuating people, and that was it. But obviously that's not the only thing that he's meant to do because, like I said, he's the main character. He has to get into the front lines eventually, you know, and I like how they decided to go ahead and hold him back because, you know, give time for the other characters to do some stuff, like Miruko. We don't really know anything about her. We don't really know how cool she is, you know, why she's this big dominant top hero, and we get to see more of that in this episode, and she's just really fucking cool, you know, despite what the internet wants you to think, she's not just really attractive. She's actually just a super cool badass character and is a great hero, and I like seeing her. And I don't think she's gonna die. I really hope that she doesn't, because seeing more of her would be cool, because she just is really fucking cool, and we see more of that. We get to see more from Hawks and the aftermath of what happened from last week's episode, where Twice is killed and Dabi is pissed, right? Dabi is pissed because he had a whole bunch of goals that he had in mind, and Twice was one of the means to be able to accomplish those goals a lot more simpler, a lot more easier. And they have some dialogue in between one another, and obviously we saw in the previous episode as well that Dabi for some reason knows Hawks' real name, right? Where no one really knew what his real name was, but he calls him out by his actual own name. So he asks Dabi who he is. And, you know, they do that whole, like, cliche thing where it's like, yeah, I'm going to tell the character what my name is, but the audience who's watching the episode isn't going to actually be able to hear it. But because people already know, and the internet doesn't even really want to shut the fuck up about it, and because the manga also exists, yeah, the whole thing with Dabi and the surprise reveal is that he's the son of Endeavor, right? He is one of the sons of Endeavor, and you know, he's Todoroki's brother, and that's like the big shocking reveal thing, right? Like, no one really knew that that's who he was. So, you know, Hawks knows that, but, you know, we don't really know what's going to happen with Hawks yet, because it's kind of left ambiguous, because the episodes have been doing this thing where they've, like, jumped back and forth from the villa to the hospital, which I don't mind, because it keeps up the pace relatively quick enough. But, you know, the more that I see of one thing, the more I'm going to want to see of that one thing, and the more I'm going to want the episode to focus more on that. But it's whatever, you know, they jump back from the villa from last week's episode back to the hospital, and the whole thing that they're trying to do in this episode is basically just try to get rid of the high-end Nomus, who progressively throughout the fight are getting a lot better and a lot more stronger, because Miruko tells the characters that through some weird, like, jolt of electricity, like, from the pods that they were supposed to be in, they are, like, quote-unquote activated, so now they're, you know, properly working like they're supposed to, and they're even better than they were before. And I think one of the ways that they show off that these high-end Nomus are, like, ridiculously powerful is that in a very short amount of time, basically like in a split second, one of the Nomus is pretty much able to completely figure out Aizawa's quirk and how it works, and that it's through eyesight, that there's, like, some sort of time limit, and that it only works if he sees the Nomu and this and that. And you know, these high-end Nomus aren't nothing to be playing around with. And we continue further within the episode, and as they're trying to deal with the Nomus, and, like, in really solid, really fucking good animation, by the way. I don't think I've really been talking about it much, but the animation for this season so far has been absolutely phenomenal. It's been a real pleasure to see. We see Miruko trying to deal with the pod that Shigaraki is in, but she can't deal with it because their Nomus are, like, getting rid of her. One of the other Nomus is fighting against Endeavor, and it's President Mike, who actually is the one that destroys the entire pod entirely, grabs the doctor, and then tries to get him to stop these Nomus, and because they're, like, under his command and yada yada. And something that was really weird that I thought happened in the episode was, like, Miruko relays the information of, like, the quote activation of these like Nomu's and even Shigaraki, who was in one of the pods as well. It like happens through like a current of electricity like throughout their body, and like right nearby where the pod that Shigaraki was in, there's like this machine that's still like turned on and it's still like activated and it's still working, and like there's a hero right next to Shigaraki's like then dead corpse, and he's just like looking at it and he doesn't do anything with it. I thought it was very weird. Obviously, like the concept of time from manga into translation for the anime is kind of like weird, because the thing with like manga panels is like when you're reading them, they're like at any pace that you really want them to be, because everything's happening all at once. Everything that's currently going on with this arc is super fast paced, but through animation they have to slow things down in order for characters to get their dialogue out, for them to speak their lines, and to get exposition out a lot of the time, and sometimes give out some certain character exposition as well, because the doctor talks about how he has this quirk that allows him to live longer, than a normal human life, and without having, what's the word I'm trying to think of, an expense for athletic ability. And he essentially gives the same quirk that he duplicates it, and he gives it to All For One. And then it's revealed that All For One did the same thing for his own quirk, and the plan was to give it to Shigaraki so that way they can carry out their plan on, taking over the world, or whatever the fuck, right? Whatever the fuck that they have planned. And so I'm looking at the hero who's like right next to Shigaraki's corpse, and I'm like, why aren't you like moving his body in any particular way? Why aren't you doing anything to make sure, like, just in case like nothing bad happens? Yeah, at the end of the episode, we actually get this really cool visual thing where like Shigaraki is like looking through the memories of his childhood, looking at the good and looking at the bad. Mainly his father, who was the one like authoritative figure that really didn't want him to go down the path of life that he had aspired to go down, which was to be a hero. And then there was his sister and his mother as well. And then eventually All For One ends up showing up, and All For One is trying to entice him with the power that's about to be given to him, whilst his family is trying to stop him from going down this path of villainy, because they don't want him to continue down this horrible path that he's continuing down on. And, he wakes up at the end of the episode, and now he is presumably the now wielder of All For One. But now I'm wondering, if they duplicated it, that doesn't mean that they took away All For One from All For One. They just duplicated it entirely. So wouldn't there now technically be two wielders of the All For One quirk? All For One himself and now Shigaraki. So if they break All For One out of prison, would there now be like two wielders of the All For One quirk? I don't know. I don't know if that's even how they were supposed to work in the first place. It kind of seems like that's what they were insinuating, that's how it worked. But maybe that's just is something else that I don't really understand. Anyways, so the episode ends there on a cliffhanger with Shigaraki waking up, and now we're going to see what happens in the next episode. And like I said, I think this is where things start really like picking up the pace. Obviously, things were already pretty fast-paced to begin with, because the whole war that's going on and this and that and yada yada. But now I feel like, because now the main showrunners, the main characters of this whole thing, with Midoriya and Shigaraki, they're like the main like two characters in this whole thing, right? Because Shigaraki's the main villain, Midoriya is the main character. So things are really going to start picking up the pace, and I have no idea what's going to happen next. So we just have to wait until next week. I hope it's something really cool. I really enjoyed this episode though, and like I said, animation this episode was really good. All these episodes so far have been really well animated. I haven't really been talking about that much, but this one in particular just really surprised me, and it made me pay attention a little bit more. Anyways, that's besides the point. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up. If you liked the video, be sure to like. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys next one. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. I'm out. Peace.